Larson. Dieter comes from Toronto. Diane's down here in the warm tropical Phoenix with me. And Eric is normally down here, but you're up in somewhere close to East Snowshoe, Wisconsin. Did I get that right?
Almost. I'm just slightly west there. I'm in Minnesota. But see, I have this polar fleece on, and none of you guys commented on that. And I'm actually starting to get cold, but I'll be all right.
Yeah, we're getting a chill down here too. It was only 106 today. Yeah.
Oh,
but
fall is here.
Yeah, but with the wind chill, it was all the way down to 105, I think.
Oh,
so we're gonna get by. All right, so here we go, folks. We got a really cool show for you tonight. First thing we'd like to do is welcome invite anybody out there who is not a member of our Fearless Flight Birds of a Feather. I almost said snowshoe group. I don't know why I said that. But anyway, this is our group where you can come for any reason, but primarily if you're afraid to fly, or maybe you know somebody who's afraid to fly, you can steer them over here. And you can join if you just like to talk about airplanes, which is another reason why people join us on Tuesdays. If you are joining us for the first time, say hi, leave us a remark. If you're watching the replay, do the same. And we're glad to have you. We're pushing 700 people now in our group, and the more the merrier. It's a great place for people to ask questions and to get answers. We on the staff, we monitor that, and I personally give feedback to people out there. So join it. It's an active group, and it's one of the best things that we did, in my opinion. Okay, so tonight's show is going to be, we're going to have a poll question coming up here in just a second. We have a COVID-19 update, sort of. Okay, I got a little story that goes along with that. Diane is sure to have an opinion on that. We have the Aviation News Roundup. We're going to be talking about something that came to me actually from one of our followers. And so I asked her for permission to, she asked me a question about an article. And so I asked her for permission if we could just do it tonight and refresh everybody's memory. We've talked about it before, but it's worthy of a revisit there. And we're going to talk about updates on actually the Southwest thing is that, and then I got a couple of little trivia type articles that are fun to talk about. Okay, poll question. Since we're going to be talking about airlines in the media there, do you search the media for stories of airplane accidents and incidents or related news about the industry? And your choices are regularly, only when it's a major news story, like somebody ends up crashing or something like that. Never, which I hope is what you do. And the last one is you don't have to, they find you. And so we just thought we'd have a little fun with that and see what kind of responses we get. Again, if you're on live with us, please put something in the remarks down there. And if you're watching the replay, do the same there. Okay.
I can tell you, I'm just going to chime in with that poll question, because one of the things that, we live in a world of algorithms, and I can tell you that things find me because we're always, not necessarily looking, but people are sending us links and stuff, and, Google and all these other platforms trying to be helpful. Always in my news feed, that stuff always shows up. So anyway, that's mine.
So a little maybe an example on that is if you've ever gone on Amazon and you wanted to buy a new set of snowshoes for East Snowshoe, Wisconsin, you'll notice, and you didn't buy them in particular, and then you go around to other sites, you'll find that conveniently and coincidentally, all these advertisements keep popping up for snowshoes. And so that's what I think Dieter was touching on is they watch your news feed. That's how they know what kind of riffraff to give you. So be careful when you do that, and because it works on you. And anytime you have you see an article in the media that you're not particularly fond of about aviation or accidents or something like that, if you want more information, please, if you can, remember to copy the URL right up there in that little address space up there in your browser and send it to us. Any one of us here, and then we'll do some research and come back to you.
We have a very enthusiastic answer already there, Ron.
Okay.
Aaron said, I make a number 5 to the poll question answers and say, hell no. So this is a family show, so we have the number 5.
There you go. There you go. All right.
And also, let me just come because people are chiming in. Jim said, search incognito mode, and that won't happen to you. Yes, that is absolutely true, Jim. And Michelle says, I don't search the media, just scroll through, like the headlines for points and
sure.
So yeah. And Paul,
so just be discerning about it. If you find it and you notice that you're getting that icky feeling about it, and you don't know really what's going on there, take copy down the URL and send it to us. So, okay, moving on here. The sort of related to the COVID-19, which is big in the news. We finally sacrificed our #1 standing here and pushed it up into the Midwest this past week, it looks like. It's still dangerous out there, folks, so stay safe out there. There was a woman, and you got to love it. Her name was actually in the media. I'm not going to give it here. She was from South Florida on her way to Illinois and boarded a plane wearing a mask that had what the flight attendant thought was a less than tasteful few words on it. Part of it was the F word. I won't talk about any political things about it, all that. And the flight attendant told her that she would need to remove that. And she also said, don't be putting it back on once you get to your seat back there. And the lady did, and they escorted her off the airplane. So we might see it in a lawsuit. Who knows? You can see anything in a lawsuit. The point I would make is, come on, man, this is America. You're out there with people traveling with their families and things like that. And there's a lot better ways to, I grew up in the 60s. Oh my God, there were posters with all kinds of obscene, lewd things on them, but I wouldn't want to put them on a t-shirt and take them with me on the airplane and to push the limits there. So, come on, be kind to one another. And only the flight attendant knows whether she was personally upset or whether she was, kind of being responsible. I hope the latter there, but nonetheless, really, we have an obligation to other people. And when have you ever changed anybody's mind by putting a t-shirt on with language that you wouldn't wear around in front of your kids, perhaps? So anyway,
I was going to say the thing with that also is we, like we've talked about before, we want everybody to get where they're going. We don't ever want to remove a passenger from a plane just because. But the bottom line is that passengers have to obey the crew instructions, and they have to be appropriate. And flying is a privilege, and you are not entitled, irrespective of whether or not you've purchased a ticket, to behave any way that you want to, because the safety and the well-being of all the passengers is always our highest priority. And so, like Ron said, just be appropriate with your behavior and what you're wearing so that you can stay on the plane.
That's why they don't let you see us in flight, because we're not always appropriate. So anyway, yeah, and the official reason that America listed in their press release was failure to comply with the crew member's instructions. Right. So that's a kind of a catch-all there. Okay, right. Related to that, guess what? The airline saw a 965% rise in passenger complaints amid the coronavirus thing. Wow, big surprise, right? So again, it's going to take a lot of patience on everybody's part, and I think on a larger scale, the people who are out there that are using their personal rights and stuff like that not to wear that, man, more power to you. But gosh, think about, I wouldn't want to get the virus and give it to my 95-year-old mom. You know, what a way to go. And I just had somebody, a stepson of mine, I just found out just minutes ago, who has contracted it. And so it's real, and it's starting to touch people that are a little closer than I like to the ones that I know. So anyway, so be careful.
I would opine that 965% is probably too large of a number to attribute to just a 965% increase in flyers. And I did see an article today talking about Delta taxiing out, and 2 passengers refused to put on the mask. They taxied back, threw them off. Okay, so you got that part. But the incredible thing is Delta bans them for life for not complying with that. And they said they have a list, and they have 100 people on it already banned for life.
Yeah.
Yeah, Diane and I were talking about that last week. So there's a new no-fly list, and it's the one that says you didn't play nice.
Yeah, and that's part of our announcements. I mean, when our passengers board, the captain gives an announcement, the forward flight attendant gives an announcement with regard to that, and my last few trips I've been aft. That is part of our announcement, that if you do not comply, you risk being not allowed to fly in our airline anymore. I mean, they're not kidding. You may not fly, as you say, get on a no-fly list. And that's for the airline that I work for and numerous others. So it's not just an isolated case with any one particular airline. They're sharing those names. And so you might not be able to fly in one particular airline, but all of them. So it's just not worth it if you want to travel.
I mean, having to go back and confront somebody is my least favorite thing to do. And I was a rookie in my first year at my first airline, and we had a passenger early morning. I've shared this with before, and he was drunk, 7 o'clock in the morning. He had already flown with this one leg. He was getting loud and boisterous and obnoxious. And the flight attendant came up multiple times. And finally, when we got to the gate, the captain was about to go in and get the new paperwork and stuff. And so he says, "Oh, Ron will take care of that." And I thought, "Are you kidding me?" And so that was baptism under fire. And I remember going back there, and it was really difficult. And he was not a friendly sort of guy. But we want you to fly with us. We want your money. Yeah, but we do like you flying with us as well.
Yeah.
So Ron, let me jump in here. I just wanna we're talking about challenges about getting on, and I just want to acknowledge Deborah. She just joined, and she said they lost power because of the hurricane, and she wanted to make sure that you talk about the Forbes article, and I think that's actually
coming up, Deborah.
Yeah, so perfect.
You. I didn't want to use your name, but since you self-identified, you are. It's your fault that everybody has to listen to Eric and I talk about this incident. No, we're really happy to do that because it really. I mean, this is something that I could see people legitimately worrying about. And you'll hear Eric and I will take a very serious tone on this here. So anyway, what Deborah had asked me was, she saw an article, and all in her first message, she just said, "Hey, I saw this article. Did you see this thing about the FAA and inspectors and all that?" And I didn't remember specifically, but I did ask her, same thing I recommended to all of you. If you have an article like that, I remembered it eventually, and I sent the URL with that, and she confirmed that this is what she was talking about. This was actually February 12th on the internet, and we did discuss that back there, and it kind of got lost perhaps because of the COVID-19 stuff that's out there now. But basically, and Eric and I are going to kind of tag team on this. The basic problem here was that Southwest Airlines had acquired 88 airplanes, I think, from foreign carriers. Russia, I forget even some of the others, all right? And when an airplane comes, even though it was US manufactured, when it comes into service from a foreign country, a foreign carrier, and the airline that's putting it into service, what they have to do when they receive it, they have to go through a very detailed, I'm going to say it's the equivalent of, if you've heard us talk before, there are multiple maintenance checks. A, B, C, and D. And and when they go from an A to a D, they get more intensive in terms of the number of man hours and the level at which they examine the airplane. I'm going to say it sounds from the article that it may have been like a C check or so. Would you say that, Eric? But they're talking 3 to 4 weeks is what they would expect the airline to have to do to check out the airplane and get it certified. So, oh, maybe Eric didn't want to talk. So anyway,
hold on. He was muted. So, there you go.
That was the best comments I've ever heard you make, Eric.
Oh, thank you very much. No,
Okay.
I would say they start at between a C and a D check because they have to make a baseline and be almost at zero, like it's a new airplane.
Yeah.
Or as we would say in the Midwest, because they have the new airplane, but quote unquote, they don't know where they at. And unless they do the D check, they don't know where they at. And all those maintenance manuals have to be translated. And some of those carriers that buy stuff from, buy the airplanes from, take meticulous care of them. I mean, meticulous care, huge pride of ownership. But nevertheless, the maintenance records have to be gone through and that stuff translated so they have a starting point of where they know to start their own maintenance cycles on the airplane. And so it's heavily involved.
So in this case, the FAA was alerted by some inspectors who had been assigned to the airline to perform some of these, to inspect the work that had been done or to sign it off and give approval. And kind of like a whistleblower operation. And what they were complaining about was some of their fellow FAA examiners and people at at Southwest, maintenance people who are FAA designees. Okay, you want to talk about that, Eric? What a designee is and why we do that?
When am I still on TV? I don't see my little picture.
Yeah, you are. You are.
Okay. When an airline or a manufacturer has to do maintenance procedures on an airplane or check rides for the pilots and all that kind of thing, the airline has its own set of rules, generally more restrictive than the FAA rules, called OPSPECs, and has its own experts, and the FAA approves that, and they approve people at the airlines to be check pilots or maintenance examiners or designees, as Ron said, is what they're called, to make sure the company is complying with the letter of the law, with the federal aviation requirements and the OPSPECs. And the company...
Was it always, Eric, was it always like that?
It wasn't, probably
No.
before deregulation, I'm guessing, when there were...
Yeah, wait, goes back. And let
not-
me just, there's just a thought that I had, is so the reason that the original reason that it was allowed, what was really, I think, is really twofold. One, the airline expansion that took place, particularly after deregulation, but even in the 60s and the 70s. So, and I don't know the exact history of that. So the FAA examiners were being stretched. There were more, the airlines couldn't afford to wait on them, have an airplane out of service while they're waiting for the FAA examiner to come by and sign it off. So they came up with this idea, which in pure theory is ideal, because even when I get a check ride from an FAA examiner who's riding on my jump seat in my airplane, he doesn't know with great detail all of the operating rules from the airline that I have to operate. And in general, airlines have a stricter set of operating instructions than just the FAA regulations. Okay, so
Exactly.
The intent was great. On the one hand, it would be a higher level of a higher standard for pilots and mechanics to perform to. On the other hand, it did open itself up for abuse, because as the airlines continued to grow and expand, that we got into this problem. So anything else, Eric, that I left out of that?
That was perfect, and it's not necessarily on the baseline back there hiding in everybody's head is the phrase conflict of interest, but the airlines don't want to be a bad person. They want to do it right. They want to get it right, but they're under extreme time pressure, cost pressure, everything else So the people attempting to get it done, working for the people that are getting it done for, all being in the same tent. It's not a fox and a hen house thing, but it's a common goal interest to get it done right. And as you and Diane spoke about earlier, the safety management system in place. If you have a safety management system in place where you disclose stuff to the FAA, hey, we blew this, we're taking care of it. Here's how we're taking care of it. That's all good, and that's improved safety tremendously, rather than trying to sneak things past the FAA. However, if you have such a system in place, you have to have somebody, typically with the FAA, checking it to make sure that compliance is occurring, and not just assume that it is.
Yeah. So on the one hand, you have an intention to produce a higher standard of maintenance and pilot operations, and on the other hand, you have a built-in conflict of interest. And so we have to be constantly on guard of that. And if we just throw a segue out here, that's what happened in the case of the 737 MAX. That's how they got into that problem. They just kept doing the same thing over and over again, expecting the same results until it got more complex and they had a problem that came up. And then you got the human factors problem. If you've ever worked in an office and you worked for a supervisor, for example, that you let's say you love that supervisor, but you had something come up, a procedure or a policy or something that you thought would be better served if they changed that. Sometimes we're reluctant as human beings. We don't want to upset the apple cart. When we're viewed as a team player. And so it has a lot to do with my personality, has a lot to do with the politics in the office that I work in. Same thing goes on not only in the airlines, in the maintenance ranks, it also goes on in the cockpit. And I've touched on this before. One of the things I had to teach pilots was in their first encounter with my airline was they had to go through my human factors course, and they had to I asked them to ask themselves, if you've ever not spoken up when you had some kind of a question or concern with a pilot you've been flying with, because that's the one thing that we can't tolerate, because you are the number one backup system in the airplane. And so that's the problem. Let's close this up, Eric, by saying, does the public have anything to worry about?
I'm still going to go with no. This is a system that needs to be redesigned, but all the parties are still struggling to get it right. They're not struggling to cut corners and get it wrong. And as we've often talked about, an accident or an incident isn't a broken link in a chain. It's all kinds of Swiss cheese with the slices being lined up, so all the holes aligned. You have many parts and many errors occurring in different processes before it can slip through the holes and an accident can occur. And it is in the company's great best interest, as well as the FAA's, to make it work correctly. So I think those processes are going to be examined pretty closely, re-examined, and hopefully a good solution arrived at.
Yeah, and the best thing that's happened is it's seen the light of day. When things come out like that, unlike maybe highway safety. Yeah.
Yeah, Deborah has basically the question that I just want to maybe.
Okay.
So was the Forbes article then misleading? Is her question. So was it misleading?
I don't think so. I think it pretty well identified the problem. I don't think it has the depth that Eric and I do, having worked in the industry, to say, it's not just a simple matter of people being evil. Okay, it's what happens when people get together, and it's human interaction, not wanting to upset the apple cart, or maybe I really do want to upset the apple cart, but I'm so obnoxious, and I'm one of those people that nobody likes anyway, and so they decide not to listen to me, and that's, it comes back to what we were talking about with Diane and the lady with the t-shirt. We live in a culture, we are connected, and the first thing I try to do when I have a disagreement with somebody is build on a connection, something that we share, before I go trying to change their mind about something. So I'm going to say I'm with Eric. First of all, it doesn't do any good for you to worry unless you turn that into something productive. Write your congressman and say, hey, what's the deal? Do we have enough? Is the budget big enough to support the number of mechanics that we have out in the system? Be proactive. And of course, we're like the mechanics in some regard. We don't want to go to any trouble. I just want to buy a ticket and get on the damn airplane and fly from Phoenix to Chicago or something. So yeah, I don't think I'm not going to worry about it when I go buy a ticket. And what really helps me more than anything is the fact that it made them the national news. And so I'm going to leave it at that. If you have any more questions, write us personally and let us know on that. Okay, we're coming
I
up.
I would call it spot on as to how the process works, but not indicative of malfeasance or misfeasance or any determined course of wrongdoing by the airlines or the manufacturers. It's just an indicator of how the process works right now.
Absolutely. And not that doesn't have consequences. That's the thing that we all need to be worried about. But again, as Eric pointed out, we have so many layers of protection in the airlines that you don't have even when you drive your car. I know you refuse to believe that, but it's true. And if this, when this gets identified as a problem, it gets attention. And you can see, look how many accidents that this has led to, leading up to this. No, it came to light by somebody who said, I want you to look at this. Okay. All right. This is a little story. I was listening to a podcast about World War II and about the firebombing in which became a big weapon in particularly in defeating Japan. And I thought the interesting thing to me I never heard about was, where did the Jetstream? Who figured out the Jetstream? And it was actually detected back in 1929. And I guarantee you there were no airplanes that could get to 29,000 feet, which is the lowest the Jetstream happened. So I was fascinated. So I did some research on this. And the way it was discovered was literally by some Japanese scientist. A particular one, I've got his name here, I would butcher it, but somewhere between 1923 and 25, and he let off 1,300 weather balloons, and he had some way of tracking them, and they would recover them, and we still use weather balloons a lot today. Anyway, and he figured out there's these high velocity winds. Well, fast forward to now, we're trying to defeat Japan, and they're using firebombing, and they're using this brand new super duper B-29, the super fortress. And the problem was they had to get in there, and they first were using high altitude bombing. So they're up here, and they had a bomb site that was it was the best in the world, but its computations were based on knowing what the winds are at altitude, right? Because if you got a big wind and you drop your bomb, it may miss the target. And none of the bombs were hitting the target. And at first they came back and they said, somebody's got to be making a mistake with that. And because the bombardiers were saying, hey, I'm telling you, the winds were over 150 miles an hour. And so when they got to check in with it, and they got some meteorologists to talk about it, at first nobody believed them. But then they found out, in fact, the winds were over 150 miles an hour. And so that's how they found the Jetstream. And it actually caused a complete change in strategy, because they didn't have time to read the bomb sites. So they now started to go in at 5,000 feet. And that's how we got Japan.
You left the one detail out. And I'd never heard of this. This guy, this Japanese scientist, was a brilliant guy. Oshiri, with the discovery of the Jetstream, but he was also local chapter president of the Esperanto Society, which was a language invented by a Polish guy in the early 1900s in a legitimate cultural attempt to find a written and spoken language so the world could all communicate with one language with each other and to foster understanding. Well, the Japanese guy, besides having a weather balloon hobby, was a big Esperantist, and he published all of his scientific results in Esperanto, which none of the U.S. military was reading at the time in their leisure reading, and nor was probably anybody else. So the scientific results kind of went undiscovered until some of the boys in the super fortresses were running out of gas. And like you said, and what was the name of that bomb site? I know you know that off the top of your head.
Norden bomb site.
Yes.
Norden Norden bomb site.
The Norden bomb site was pretty fab, but couldn't correct for a 200 knot crosswind going down through 10,000 feet. So I'm sure they were mystified as to why they were missing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Pretty,
Uh,
All right. And the last topic for tonight is this is going to be great news for all of our fearful flyers. This is the next phase of development in an airliner. Every passenger is going to get a button that if something goes wrong, you can hit push to land. And I would imagine that no, that's not true at all. The part that is true is there is a push. There's always been a push to find a way so that if you have only one pilot on board or even two, but neither one of them are, they're both incapacitated. There's always been this search to find, before drones even, to figure out a system so that somebody on board the airplane could land the airplane. And so this was a legitimate story that there, and this is over dramatized here. So you get a red button, push the airplane will land itself there. Frankly, I think what'll happen before that is the drone technology will be in there so that somebody just hits a button and it hooks it up and gives control to the people on the ground. And related to that, when we were having, right after 9/11, one of the things that they were looking at was to give FAA controllers the ability to take over control of the airplane. Boeing actually has a patent on a system to do that. And let me tell you, that's controversial because, you know, who's going to control Boeing? Who's going to hack the system and all that? So anyway, thought you'd like to take
let me
that.
just say that if the button does get patented, if it costs more than $10 and it's installation time of more than 37.5 minutes, you tell me which airline is going to buy it.
Well, forget the airline. If you have this on a light airplane, it's the button's going to cost more than the whole cost of the airplane.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
The airline's
so we're not going to do that.
No stinking button if it costs more than $10. They're not going to do it.
All right. By popular demand, we're going to shut this thing down tonight before you all get tired and go to sleep on us. So we would like to thank you. Have we got any questions or open issues, Dieter, that we need to address before we leave?
Well, we certainly have comments. Susan Miglaccio said, well, just ask Siri and she'll tell you how to
There
learn.
you go. Yeah. Yeah. I hope it works better because I'll be on a phone call doing a coaching call like I was this last week, and I'll just say something and all of a sudden Siri butts in, you know, and I'm like, come on, Siri, leave me alone. So yeah, so hopefully that doesn't breed confidence in it. All right. We want to thank you all for joining us again tonight. We're going to leave you now and come back next week. We have some really cool things coming up next week. We're going to talk about virtual reality. I saw an article in the news that for a while that was really big as a way to address fearful flyers' fears. And so we're going to bring you up to date on that. And we also have a cool new audio program calling Putting Mindfulness into Practice, PMP. It's our new PMP program. And this is the trend that I've been talking about for some time now. Not only is it going to be some great applications for mindfulness, but also we have a way of integrating cognitive learning. So you can learn in addition to calming yourself while you listen to it. So we're going to talk about both those next week. And if you tune in, you're going to get a free audio program to download. So anyway, thanks, Diane. Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Dieter. And we'll see you back here next week for another episode of Fearless Flight Live. Adios, everybody.
You guys.
bye.